With nearly 5,000 specialists dedicated to supporting dealer financial services, Ally has the expertise to help you with your retail finance, F&I, and remarketing needs. We're all better off with an Ally. Contact your local Ally account executive to get started today. Ally, do it right.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Monday, August 11th, 2025. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, the global lithium market soars after CATL idles a mine in China. JLR's profits tumble thanks to tariffs. And car buyers had an easier time getting approved for loans in the second quarter. Plus, Congresswoman Haley Stevens joins the show to talk about her experience on the Presidential Task Force for the auto industry in 2009 and what lessons apply today.
We need a real plan with real investment to bring the manufacturing back.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Lithium prices and stocks are jumping after battery giant CATL halted operations at a major mine in China. The move is spurring speculation that Beijing might move to suspend other projects as it tackles overcapacity across the economy. The CATL mine is one of the largest in the world. There has been speculation for weeks that authorities might not extend its license. According to Bank of America, the mine accounts for some 6% of global output. Jaguar Land Rover's profit dropped by half in the latest quarter. That's thanks in large part to U.S. tariffs and currency exchange rates. Profit before tax for the 3-month period fell 49% to $472 million. Profit margin dropped from almost 9% the same period last year to 4%. JLR was hit by President Donald Trump's decision in April to increase tariffs on cars imported to the U.S. to 27.5%. And a new study hints that consumers are having more success getting approved for auto loans. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's second quarter data, just 6.7% of applicants had been turned down for an auto loan during the previous 12 months. That's down from 19% in the New York Fed's June 2024 second quarter poll. Last year was the worst on record for consumers seeking auto loans. 11% of 2024 auto loan applicants were rejected. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Now joining me to talk more about that story that suggests customers are having a better time getting approved in F&I offices is John Hutter, who covers retail, finance, and insurance for us at Automotive News. John, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Hey, great to be here.
John, do we know why more people are being approved for loans compared to last year?
Well, we don't specifically, but I mean, the data suggests the rejections are way down. One of the finance executive at a large dealership group, he was arguing that maybe it's a situation where the people who couldn't qualify for a loan aren't even trying to go for it. So that decreased the rejections. But I'm working on a story right now. A lot of the major banks, their originations are way up this year, like over the first half of the year. So it kind of does look like the lenders themselves are kind of getting back into the game more than they were last year. These are major banks, so they might skew more towards like prime customers. But on the flip side, Credit Acceptance Corps, which does primarily subprime, mentions it's lost some market share. And so it suggests that somebody on that end is also picking up that business, or at least dealers, unless dealers aren't just using them and can't get the guy approved anywhere else. But so it does look like the market might be a little bit better for customers this time around.
And what does this say about the overall health of the market and for dealers?
Yeah, it kind of like that. It looks like they might have better luck getting their consumers approved than in the past. It's certainly a recommendation to try, give it a shot, or try more lenders. Maybe check in with your lender and see if they're buying more loosely than they were a year ago. There might be what you think might be their range that they buy loans in might be broader this year.
Perfect. John, thank you so much for joining me.
All right. Thank you.
Coming up, U.S. Congresswoman Haley Stevens joins the show to talk about the state of the auto industry as Washington swerves. That's next on Daily Drive.
For over 100 years, Ally has helped dealers like you serve your customers by providing the best in class products and services you need, and by remaining true to the automotive passion we share. Your dedicated Ally account executive will work hand in hand with you to help you gain efficiencies, increase your product offerings, and work to improve per vehicle revenue. Because we care about your business as much as you do. We're all better off with an Ally. Contact your local Ally account executive to get started today. Ally, do it right.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Congresswoman Haley Stevens had a front row seat seeing the auto industry in crisis in 2009. As part of the Obama administration's 2009 Auto Task Force, the Michigan Democrat played a role in steering General Motors and Chrysler away from the brink of collapse. Now, Stevens says the industry faces a new kind of threat, an aggressive push by China to dominate global car exports. Our own Molly Boygan spoke with Stevens about lessons learned from 2009 that apply today, and her No Chinese Cars Act. Here's the first part of their conversation.
Congresswoman Haley Stevens, thank you so much for joining us on Daily Drive.
Hey, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
So you were on the presidential task force for the auto industry in 2009. In some ways feels like a very long time ago, and in other ways, I'm sure not at all. I would be curious to hear what lessons you learned from that experience about how the domestic auto industry can thrive that you could apply today.
Look, at that time, we saw General Motors and Chrysler staring bankruptcy in the face, a true liquidation. And it was a very serious moment for our country and all the more serious moment for Michigan in particular. With those companies potentially liquidating, we would have had major shock effects into our supplier base. And in fact, other original equipment manufacturers came to us in the Department of the Treasury on the Obama task force and said, please do not let these companies liquidate. Of course, that's not totally the conversation that's being had today, but as always in the automotive industry, there are a lot of changes at play. There's a very aggressive competition going on with the Chinese Communist Party, and some of the dumping and the approach that China is taking to autos right now. For instance, General Motors lost $5 billion with the Chinese government changing what they could sell there on the drop of a dime. They were certainly very marketed there and heavy in production, and that's changed their business model and our American auto industry. And about a year and a half ago, China became the largest exporter of vehicles, surpassing Japan. And what they've done is they've gone into Europe. Europe was kind of not paying attention. And we here in the United States of America are. And as a policymaker, one of the things that I'm working on is trying to prevent a flooding of our market with these Chinese cars. We have obviously very high tariffs and they haven't reached our shores yet, but we don't want to see the CCP circumventing our tariffs by building production facilities with our North American trading partners and then exploiting USMCA to come in to the US. So I've actually drafted legislation on this called the No Chinese Cars Act. And I feel really strongly about a bill like that. And it's something I'm working hard on in the United States Congress, and I'm hoping that some of my colleagues also join me in passing something like that into law.
Yes, the No Chinese Car Act would prevent companies from basically setting up shop in a third country and circumventing the tariffs, taking advantage of the USMCA, as you said. But there's also, as you alluded to earlier, a whole global market. And I've heard people talk about the domestic automakers' prospects in that global market in very dire terms in the coming years as China is projected to grow in global market share. How can the United States protect the domestic automakers' share of the global market? Or maybe it's not even possible. And how would you kind of respond to those projections that say this could be, have hugely negative impacts for the domestic manufacturers.
Well, certainly, I'm going to leave the capitalism and the for-profit enterprise to the for-profit companies. But I will say this in terms of the level playing field and trade, and particularly areas where I've been somewhat skeptical of this current administration, in part because it's just been so erratic with tariffs, and it's had a lot of ramifications on our small manufacturers, particularly our automotive suppliers. I was just meeting with a company I've been so privileged to know for a long time now, named Alpha USA. They're located in Livonia, Michigan. They've been around for 68 years. They're making some incredible parts, components, and an amazing shop floor, and they are just struggling with the payments that they have to make around tariffs as an American automotive supplier. And you saw our governor again go and visit the president to talk about a handful of very relevant issues to Michigan. And of course, tariff relief for manufacturers was on the list. And I'm now going to go to the drawing board and look at legislation around relief for these small manufacturers and these businesses, not only because it's nice to have the jobs, which are great and change lives, and there's so much contributed to communities, but this is also a question of national security, and we can't make it cheaper to make outside of America because we're putting tariffs on so many different parts, components, and aspects of the manufacturing process. And so, I just wish that this current administration would really have Michigan at the forefront of their mind, and not so much these other factors that are contributing to them pursuing such erratic, change by the minute policies. We hear about all these deals being cut with other countries, but we need deals being cut here in Michigan. When we're making here in Michigan, we're unstoppable. We're selling all over the world. And that's not just a platitude. That's evidenced by, in the last 10 to 15 years, Detroit being again and again one of the top export destinations for this country, and sometimes the very top export destination. And that has to do with our great trade into Canada and American companies who locate just across the border, and sometimes even with American labor. And we've got this incredible ecosystem of very rich talent here in Michigan. And in terms of where the ball is going to move, maybe it does become more regional. Maybe this puts more pressure on our country to develop technology partnerships like what we have with Australia, the UK, and the US called AUKUS, which is around the development of nuclear submarine technology and production and workforce training, also along the lines of broader technology efforts. What if we added other democracies into that type of innovation partnership? And again, with the full national security guardrails around it. But I know it'd be smart for us to be talking to the Japanese. We need to be aggressively co-developing new technologies and working with allies who play by open free market capitalist rules. Otherwise, we're just going to see China breaking rules and trying to eat our lunch. And we're going to be left here in Michigan holding the bag.
When you talk about deals being cut with Michigan, you alluded to tariff relief. Is there some other incentive structure that you think would make the tariff policy more effective? Some benefit offered to U.S. companies somehow?
Look, I think that President Trump needs to cool it with daily tariff announcements. We had 55 in his first 100 days, and we've well surpassed that now. What I know works, and what I believe some who are unfortunately much more extreme, I don't think this is everybody in Washington, but there are certainly sometimes extreme voices who end up calling the shots, and we've got a very tight majority in the House of Representatives. It's barely a governing majority, but they're working, their majority, certainly. We just saw a big tax bill get passed, which was another example of the exact opposite type of things that we need to be doing for our manufacturing sector, and take it from somebody who's lived it. For instance, the Chips and Science Act. This is proven industrial policy. Our automakers even said it was the first time in their lives where they got to see true industrial policy positioning America to recapture a lost level of production in this country. When I worked on the Obama auto rescue, we knew we were overly reliant on China vis-a-vis Taiwan for critical minerals and the critical microchips, those semiconductors that go into all of our manufactured goods. And according to Moore's law, like only seem to double, right? So the microchips that were in our cars in '09 are now, XXX what they were then. It's like triple, triple, triple. And that's incredible, the level of code and now we call everything artificial intelligence, but data and synchronization in our automobiles. And we need to be pushing very aggressively towards the improved safety standards and quality of our vehicles. There's $1 billion of R&D that goes into any vehicle. What I'm getting at here is that the CHIPS and Science Act, Molly, that worked. That was policy that said, yes, we're going to take some of your hard-earned tax dollars. We have to treat this very seriously when we're spending taxpayer dollars. But we believe this is the right bet for our country to take your hard-earned taxpayer dollars and put it into the open marketplace to recreate an industry. That was the CHIPS and Science Act. It was signed into law in August of 22. I was standing behind the president because I played such a lead role in getting that bill done. And it was signed into law, and within one business quarter of it being signed, we saw quadruple the investment come in to this country. It was paying for itself 4 times over, and then that more than doubled by the end of the former president's term. And when we see that level of, yes, taking your taxpayer dollars, but meeting an industry moment to recreate our ability to design, to produce, and to ship microchips here in the United States of America, and that shipping component with the packaging is quite complicated, that's a great day. We need to be doing that with critical materials. And what we do with the minerals and the rare earth elements that get shipped over to China all across the world, we've let them dominate this industry. They process and refine and then own it and then sell those critical materials back to us. We don't need the president saying to China, oh, let me just cut a better deal with you so that you can continue to process all these minerals. We need a real plan with real investment to bring the manufacturing back. That is industrial policy. That is a 21st industrial policy scheme that works, that is proven, and doesn't leave us reliant on foreign adversaries who do not play by our same set of rules. Our plight over the next 25 years, as we get to that mid-century mark, has got to be based on the industrial rules-based order that America leads alongside our allies who are also singing from that same hymnal.
U.S. Representative Haley Stevens spoke with our own Molly Boygon. You can hear the rest of their conversation on our upcoming bonus episode of Daily Drive that will be available Sunday. A quick note, Congresswoman Stevens is in a competitive primary for the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate. We are reaching out to other candidates in that race to join the podcast and share their policy perspectives on the U.S. auto industry. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own John Hutter for his reporting for today's podcast. We also had reporting from Nick Gibbs of our sibling publication, Automotive News Europe. You can get the latest news on regulation from Washington, lithium supplies, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a conversation with Unifor President Lana Payne about the state of tariffs and their impact on the North American auto industry.
These are very, very scary times, and I know it's a leap of faith often to say that we have to get to the right negotiating moment with the right leverage, but honestly, a deal today that would have included permanent or normalization of tariffs on the auto industry would have been devastating for workers in Canada.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.